What's good, everybody? Shenanigans here at Spawn. I'm Pete, and we are going to tie some peanut bunker. Don't go make toast. I didn't say peanut butter. Tying peanut bunker. Grab your stuff. Let's have some fun. Alright, welcome back to yet another bait fish. I hope you guys aren't bored with this, and today we're going to keep it interesting once again, still with the same end goal in mind, that being how do we catch huge predatory fish using small bait fish. So today we're going to jump into the lunker bunker. So in the vise got an SA274. This is size 2, so clearly we're going to be tying this a little bit different than the previous bait fish. We're not going on a jig hook, we're going on a jig shank. And so we're going to be using a little bit of a trailer, stinger style, whatever you want to call it. And boy, is it going to be fishy. So, bunker. What are bunker? Specifically, what are peanut bunker? This is pretty simple. I'm going to clear up some things for you today. A peanut bunker is just a small Menhaden. So Menhaden baitfish in its juvenile form, peanut bunker. But we're tying a bunker to catch big fish, so lunker bunker. Now you're all caught up. So for this tail, we're using a Spawn Polliwog tail, and this is Grizzly. Why the Spawn Polliwog and not feathers or something like that? Well, when reading about lures, and I mean true blue lures, not flies that could be misconstrued as a lure or any of that, when you're talking how to catch more specifically striped bass, right? If you have bunker lures that have a lot more tail kick and tail action, they seem to produce more fish. So when you're switching from a lure, translating that to fly, well, use the information that's already there. Like, these bait guys have been doing this for a long time, especially on the East Coast. Why not just use some of that info and go, well, if I need a fly with a lot of movement in the back section, by all means, let me tie an articulated version of a bait fish and let that tail swing and move as much as possible. So one way we're going to make that even more pronounced is let that polliwog tail get fully saturated. So now you're going to have this swinging motion of this back section and then highlighted or accentuated with the kick of that polliwog tail. So you see here, got a thread loop. I'm going to put some Spawn semi, and this is just white silver regular. And we'll be switching that as we go to the shank, same color, different size. Little teaser for you there. So on this back section here for this 274 hook, call that 2 to 2¼ inches worth of a dub ladder. So get that full, get your material in there nice and neat, and then spin her up. And of course we've got the Swiss CDC brush, so we're just going to give that a little kiss, nice and neat, tidy up all that goodness inside that loop. So if they're loose fibers, this is how you remove them before tying it, and get all those fibers sticking out to the side like a nice bottle brush bristly kind of look. So there we go, nothing to it, pretty simple for this tail, but man, is it going to have a lot of movement. I've got dubbing stuck to me, and that's no good. There we go. So just keep working this forward, a little coaxing, if you will, with your offhand on every wrap, and there we go. That's essentially our tail. Not too bad. I hope you guys have been enjoying the bait fish series. Again, this is kind of my MO. I see the dead horse, and I enjoy kicking that dead horse. And still kicking right now. So, when will this end? I don't know. I guess when I'm done tying bait fish and on to the next critter. But until then, let's have some fun tying these things. Delving into it a little bit. And it looks pretty good to me. A couple whip finishes. And we will call this done. Let's get a second one for good measure. And Yahtzee. Trim that out. Alright, let me see if I've got some cement hanging around here. Sure do. little dab, and we're going to work that Loon hardhead all the way around those thread wraps. Let it saturate all the way through, because this is going to get smashed. Not kissed, not tickled, smashed. And that's what we want. We want flies that get a big reaction. There we go. Tail, done. So I'm just going to pop this out, and we will put in our shank. And yes, I am tying on the Stonfo Transformer. Amazing, amazing vise. If you don't have one, I'm not saying you need one, but you would find something to do with it, guaranteed. Alright, so you see here, I'm putting that shank in without the hook, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But just to get things started, let me get this arm tied down. And so I'm going to creep back here. I'm not going to use any weighted wire just yet. I just want to get this arm tied down. And so go to the back, and then I want to help it up on a couple there and use the tension of my thread wraps for the rest. Nothing crazy. Trim out that tag end of thread, and then let's scoot up here, push that bead into position roughly. If I just turn that, it'll hold the bead. Now we've got weighted wire, and this is size 0.030. Getting pretty big here on the weighted wire. 6-7 wraps, whatever. And this is just a placeholder. It is not adding enough weight to make a substantial difference. To do that, if you really need this heavy, by all means, maybe consider even going a second bead behind the football bead. Whatever you want to do, you can weight this a bunch of different ways. But for today's fly, we're going on something with this 90-degree 30mm jig shank here from Spawn. And the reason being, I do want that exaggerated vertical drop and pull, and so 90-degree jig shank versus 60-degree, just for a little bit more of that, again, pronounced jig action. And so the bunker, they like to hang out in like little pools as they come near shore. And so by all means, this is where you want to have something set up where you can drop and then retrieve in a quick fashion, but not necessarily back to you. You want to get as much vertical movement out of that fly as possible, and this is how you do it. Alright, so I'm just really trying to get these weighted wire wraps covered up as much as possible so that this bead is snug as a bug. And of course we will come through with a plethora of other materials as we progress, but for now I think we can call this shank solidified and move on to the next step. Alright, so I've got to somehow connect that hook, and today I've got some braid. This is 30-pound. This is actually spider wire, but any type of braid would work. If you like wire, by all means use wire, but as you can see I've got two ends here, and that's what I'm going to tie in, and I want to keep this all right on top of the shank. And then that will help me, when I add this hook, it'll track properly and swim exactly the way I want. I'm going to turn that toward you so you can see. Keep the spider wire or whatever you're going to use on top of that shank. Get that thread out of my way. Alright, so now we have the open end's tied down. Here's the other end. It's closed. Made a little loop there. So a couple things to keep in mind. One, I'm going to create some space to allow that hook to swing a little bit. Side to side, but also I want to add a couple 3D beads, and so I've got 3D beads in gray today, and these are the standard size, and let me get one of them on there. And then the key thing too with this spider wire is you want to make sure it doesn't curve or twist as you're adding these elements. So let me add this second bead, and boom, so now we've got two beads. Now all we need is a hook. But we do need to remember the orientation of this hook is hook point up, right? Jig, shank, hook point up on the trailer, and slip that on. So that's what that's going to look like, but we still have to run that braid back through both of those beads. So bear with me here for a second. I'm trying not to pierce my finger on that hook. I suggest you do the same and not pierce your finger. Alright, so now we just snug that up until we're happy. So if you butted this all the way up to the shank, you're going to prohibit some of that movement. So give yourself a 32nd or 1/16 of an inch of room there. And the beauty of this is we can give a couple soft wraps and get that spider wire into position and then check again and see if that's going to have enough movement for us, maybe too much space. I like that. It's really going to let that fly or swing, if you will, swim. Here's the deal. By all means, you could use a red bead in there and give a hot spot on the backside. But what I'm trying to do here is kind of use these trigger elements that are allowing movement to do double duty. And so the backside of these bunkers, even the peanut bunker, are pretty gray. So they're like this medium to dark dun color. And having these gray beads and then with that white silver, the illusion of the Grizzly is going to all blend to give a dark gray appearance. There we go. So got all that braid tied in. I'm just going to, at this point, cut the loop, that closed part, so that when I bring these back over themselves, I'm going on the sides and down below where they came on top of the shank. And like my side looks good. I don't know about your side, but hopefully you get the idea. At this point, it's tied down enough so you'll see, here I'll show you. I'm going to snug that up so that it sits right up against that previous section of braid. Cut both ends out, and now you can see it's pretty clean on top, but it comes toward the front, goes back over toward the back. There's no way this is coming undone, not slipping, nothing. Solid, solid, solid. That's what we want. When you're targeting big, nasty species, don't tie a wimpy fly, because you'll get the result you think, and that's no good. All right. So now we'll get back to what looks familiar and kind of follows along with what we've been doing. First thing you're going to see, this is already noticeably bigger than the previous bait fish, even though smaller hook, right? So you can change this to make it fit everything you need it to do. Even if you're not tying bunker, but you're tying a bait fish, and this is the movement you want, well, change the colors, match it to what bait fish you're trying to copy or emulate, and by all means, I can tell you, it's very successful. All right, second loop here. So now we're switching to that. I told you we'd switch, and not color, but size. So now we're going to throw in a big chunk of mega spawns semi in white silver, and on this one bigger section to cover, we're looking again, use that scissor, whatever's on your desk every time, as a new measuring tool, not just a scissor. It's all about dual purpose today. There we go. That's a big chunk. Let's get it spun up. You could obviously change any little bit of this to fit your water. So, you know, something that's kind of got familiarity is this coloration for the underbody. And it's just very basic and generic minnow, bait fish, whatever you want to call it. Pearl would work, absolutely. Any white version would be great, all that stuff. Silver would be great. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be limited to the materials I'm throwing in. Again, this is such a subjective deal that to say this has to be the color is just not the way it goes. All right, so got all that big mega spawn dub in that loop, and let's start wrapping this bad boy. So what I want here with the mega is just to get some coverage that extends a little bit beyond those two 3D beads. Say that 5 times fast. 2 3D beads. All right. And we'll get that brushed out again once we finish wrapping this. And you'll see we don't have to have full visibility on those beads for them to be successful, because once this is saturated and in the water, that's going to have a different visibility. So you, again, double duty. We've got a trigger on the visual side as well as the movement that those two beads are going to allow. So we're going to get pretty close to filling this up right behind the bead. About 1/8 of an inch left. That's perfect for what we still need to add. Let's try to keep that hook. I know what's going to happen is it's going to sneak around there one of these times, and I'm going to find it with my finger. We'll know together if it happens. Tie down the excess part of that loop and then trim out the tag. Back to the Swiss CDC brush, and let's try to get some life out of these fibers. Different deal when you're playing with the Mega versus the regular, obviously. Longer fiber, all that good stuff. But another factor that this is doing is it going to give me some of that bulk up in front. So, you know, look at the anchovy, right? Pretty slick, pretty small profile fish, not a lot of vertical depth, if you will. Whereas now you're getting into bunker, which is closer to a shad shape, where it's big in the front and then a you know, somewhat of a taper coming back. So already we've got this mentality or framework set up. We just follow along with it. Everything should line up for us. All right, coloration on these things is a pretty big deal. It's not vibrant by any means. It's almost a pastel or muted tone in some parts of this bait fish. But it is bright, it does give off a lot of light, and so we want a lot of flash here, but we don't want that flash to just collapse. And so instead of using Ice Wing, today I've switched to some Ripple Ice, and this is golden olive. So I'm just going to veil all that goodness right over the thread, and then I'll bring it all up at once on top. And this is really where you want to be, making sure everything's on top here. So let me just turn this to my eyeballs for a second and then tie down like so. And so let me get that over that hook point, and then I can turn and show you guys. This is the dorsal side now. So you can see that's going to give off quite a bit of sparkle and shine and all that flash, and that's exactly what we were looking for. All right. So from here, you're going to find some familiarity in these previous bait fish that we've been tying. Got some light olive bucktail. Don't need a ton of it here. We're just going for that gradual progression of shiny side up to dorsal, darker coloration, which happens to match about 99.7% of all the bait fish out there. For those other 0.3%, well, we're probably not fishing those. Alright. Light olive coming in. And again, this is where you want to make sure you have good bucktail. So if you're getting your bucktails from us here at Spawn, you know that you have the length on the fibers from these tails to get this done properly. And so let's just tie this in. A couple guided wraps there to start, and just check our work. And so that hair is just a little bit on my side. There's that hook. I told you we'd find it. Ta-da! Success. I don't think we're going to get a lot of blood coming out yet, so we'll be okay. Alright, so now redo, and looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Get in here for some nice, neat scissor work, and sharp scissors. Gotta have them. We've got them. If you don't, hit us up. We will guide you in the right direction and make sure you get the right scissor for what you're tying. There we go. Really want to clean up this neck area with all that bucktail goodness. And still a little bit of movement in that bead, but we've got some more elements here, and it'll solidify everything by the time we finish. All right, now just slightly darker, keeping that olive mentality, so it goes from like this yellow gold, fades into light olive, into dark brownish olive. So we've got Sculpin olive now as our next element. And again, don't need a bunch. A little bit, that's all. The length of the fibers here to provide continuity are probably more important than getting the exact tone. So by all means, if you don't have Sculpin olive, brown olive would work, regular olive would work, dark olive would work. You see what I'm saying? You have the stuff at home to tie these flies. It doesn't have to match exactly what I've got going in the vise. The effect will be very similar. Alright, so again, right on top, I'm going to match up the length to kind of blend into what we did on the light olive. A couple soft wraps here to start. Get back, just check, make sure it's staying where it's supposed to. A little smoosh with the thumbnail, and we will finish solidifying down that bucktail. Alright. Almost done, folks. Hope you're sticking with it. All that bucktail out of there. And if you miss a couple of these pieces of bucktail, it's not the end of the world. We do have more stuff coming, but cleanliness does help. There we go. I really want to crank on this thread head or thread neck at this point. Get it as smooth as possible before we finish this off here. Alright, so now one thing we talked about is that bigger forward section here on these bunker or Medhaden, and so this is how we're going to accomplish that without throwing in a ton more material. We're going to use some laser dub. This is Senyo's laser dub from Hareline. We're going to do some olive on top to match that dorsal side we've been working on, and then we'll come in with some Minnow gray underneath, and this will provide that bigger head, push some water, and give us the desired taper we want. So right on top, nothing crazy. What you want to do here is be very diligent and check that you're staying right on top. It's not a lot of thread wraps here. 3, 4, 5. Alright, so at this point I'm just going to pull back slightly. Do you see I've still got that gap there? I don't want that gap. So I'm going to finish my thread wraps forward until I get behind the bead, like so. Now when I pull back, full coverage, I'm hitting that bead. That's the look. Alright, so just veil back, thread comes over, grab just the tip of that material. See that? Couple thread wraps, that's all we need. Good to go. And we'll get the comb out here in a second and really make this look nice. Alright, so this is silver minnow belly laser dub, and that's what we're going to use on the bottom here. So you see how nicely that kind of matches up with white silver. You could go white laser dub for, for sure you could. I happen to like how this one lines up. And again, checking, staying diligent. Is it on the bottom? And if so, then again, tie up to just behind the bead, and then when you veil back, that gives you that fuller coverage. And now just match up those thread wraps to the top side, and we should be good to go. Let's see. Flip this bad boy back over. Alright, I warned you, comb was coming out. Here it is. So now you see, the more you mess with these fibers, the more they're going to separate and thin out, and so you don't want to comb it out in an exaggerated form and then lose all of the other elements, but you do want to comb it out so that when you do get this thing wet, it's all going to kind of, again, go for that taper, right? So it's subtle. That's the name of this game, subtle. No big movement, no big jumps, just at the end, everything kind of makes sense. Alright, so now, one more time here, really clean up that head area. And whip finish. Yep, we're doing eyes again, so I'm not going to sit here and cake this thing in head cement. What I am going to do is get those eyeballs on and then get the whole fly wet. See what we can see. Actually, let's do this backwards today. Bear with me. I'm going to get this wet and then we'll put the eyes on. Why not? I do happen to have water here, so at this point I'm not going to sing for you. I don't think anybody needs that or wants that. However, I'll keep chatting. How's everybody doing? Remember, time flies. It's not just for the fish, it's also for you. So don't get stressed out. Just keep in mind, this is supposed to be fun. Have a good time. Does that look bait fishy? I think so. Alright, let's see if we can't find the back end of that shank again. Get that in there. There we go. Alright, a little excessive on the water, but it's alright, because I wanted to see where all that material is going to line up for me. So now let's get to the eyes real quick. And for the eyes, I'm just sticking with those rainbow black that we've been using the last couple times. Again, to hammer home the concept, what you have on your tying desk or at your station is probably okay. You know, don't freak out, go, man, I don't have the right materials to tie that exact fly. Oh my goodness, if that were the case, we would never get anything done, right? Try it. Use some different materials. Throw it together. Get the measurements down. Get the technique down. And then down the road, worry about getting the exact material for that fly, whatever it might be, right? This is a lifelong pursuit. This isn't something we master from Tuesday to Saturday. So line those eyes up. I'm going to give them a little squeeze right there. Bueno. Alright, one last thing. Keep in mind, I am coming in here, once this all dries, super glue gel, once that's all dried, I'll come back in with resin and all that good stuff. But, this is the last thing I'm going to show you. Here is a Sharpie. They do have a distinctive black spot here behind the eye. I don't know if this is going to hold with this being wet, but I'll show you where. So there's one. I'll do it on my side, because if I don't do it now, I'll forget. Anyway, when that's dry, it'll be a lot easier. Go ahead, come in, put a black mark there, use the marker and put little dots all the way back down. 4 or 5 would be great. And there you have it, folks. Peanut bunker, which is, again, the small version of a Medhaden bait fish, especially on the East Coast, that is crucial, vital element to successful striper fishing. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, by all means, please hit like, please hit subscribe, leave a comment below if you want to see a specific bait fish, and we will see you guys on the water.